The Exorcist. Chapter 1. The First Signs. In the quaint, secluded town of Maplewood, the Thompson family led a peaceful life. The family comprised of Mark and Sarah, and their two sons, Jake and Ethan. Jake, the older of the two, had just entered his teenage years, while Ethan, a cheerful and energetic boy, was 7 years old. Their home, a charming old farmhouse, sat on the outskirts of town, surrounded by dense woods. It was a serene place, filled with laughter and warmth, until strange occurrences began to shatter their tranquility. It started subtly. Mark and Sarah would hear faint whispers at night, voices too soft to understand, but unmistakably present. Objects in the house would move seemingly on their own, a chair shifting slightly, a door creaking open, a book falling off a shelf. They dismissed these events as figments of their imagination, tricks played by their tired minds. Chapter 2. The Escalation. As weeks passed, the phenomena grew more disturbing. The once pleasant smell of freshly baked bread and blooming flowers was replaced by an acrid, sulfuric stench that lingered in the air. The lights flickered erratically, plunging rooms into sudden darkness, only to illuminate again moments later. Jake, who had always been a bright and lively boy, began to change. He became withdrawn and irritable, his behavior growing increasingly erratic. He spoke of nightmarish visions and shadowy figures that haunted his dreams. Sarah, concerned for her son's well-being, took him to several doctors, but all their tests came back normal. There was no physical ailment to explain Jake's distress. Then one night, Sarah was jolted awake by the sound of Jake's screams. She rushed to his room, only to find him thrashing on his bed, his eyes rolled back, his body contorted in unnatural ways. Mark and Sarah held him down, trying to calm him, but it was as if an unseen force had taken control of their son. Chapter 3. The Priest. Desperate for answers, the Thompsons turned to Father John, the priest of their local church. Father John was a kind and compassionate man, known for his unwavering faith and dedication to his parishioners. When Mark and Sarah explained their plight, he listened intently, his expression grave. "I believe your son is being tormented by a malevolent spirit," Father John said. "I will come to your home and see what I can do." Father John arrived at the Thompson house armed with holy water, a crucifix, and his Bible. He walked through the room sprinkling holy water and reciting prayers, but the oppressive atmosphere only seemed to intensify. As he entered Jake's room, the temperature dropped sharply, and a guttural growl echoed through the air. Chapter 4. The Exorcism begins. Father John, undeterred, began the exorcism ritual. Jake lay on his bed, his face twisted in a grotesque snarl, his eyes blazing with an otherworldly light. Father John recited the rites, his voice steady and resolute, despite the demonic presence that filled the room. "By the power of Christ, I command you to leave this child," he shouted, pressing the crucifix to Jake's forehead. Jake's body convulsed violently, his screams reverberating through the house. The lights flickered, and the air grew thick with the stench of decay. Mark and Sarah held each other, praying silently for their son's deliverance. Chapter 5. The Struggle. The exorcism was a grueling battle between good and evil. Jake's voice, now a deep, otherworldly growl, spewed curses and blasphemies. The entity possessing him fought with relentless fury, determined to maintain its grip on the boy. Father John continued his prayers, sweat pouring down his face, his hands trembling but unwavering. He could feel the demon's power, a dark and malevolent force that sought to break his spirit. But he stood firm, drawing strength from his faith and the desperate hope in the eyes of Jake's parents. "Leave this boy, unclean spirit. In the name of the Lord, I command you," Father John cried, his voice echoing with divine authority. Chapter 6. The Climactic Battle. The room seemed to pulse with a life of its own, shadows twisting and writhing along the walls. Jake's body arched off the bed, suspended by an unseen force. His mouth opened in a silent scream, and for a moment it seemed as if the darkness would swallow him whole. Father John raised the Bible high, reciting the final passages of the exorcism ritual with unwavering conviction. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul." As the last words left his lips, a blinding light filled the room. Jake's body fell limp, the shadows dissipating, and the oppressive weight lifted. The stench of sulfur faded, replaced by the faint scent of flowers. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. Jake lay still on the bed, his breathing shallow but steady. Father John, exhausted but triumphant, knelt beside him, offering a silent prayer of thanks. Mark and Sarah rushed to their son's side, tears of relief streaming down their faces. "Thank you, Father," Sarah whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Father John nodded, a weary smile on his face. "The battle is over, but the war is never truly won. Stay vigilant and keep your faith strong." The days that followed were a time of healing for the Thompson family. Jake slowly returned to his old self, the shadows that had haunted him now just a distant memory. The house, once a place of fear and despair, was filled with light and laughter once more. Chapter 8. The Vigil. Though the demon was banished, Father John continued to visit the Thompson home, blessing each room and offering guidance and support. He knew that the forces of darkness were always lurking, waiting for a moment of weakness. Mark and Sarah, grateful for their family's salvation, became active members of the church, their faith strengthened by their ordeal. They shared their story with the community, a cautionary tale of the unseen dangers that lurk in the shadows and the power of faith to overcome even the darkest of evils. In the heart of Maplewood, the story of the Thompson family became a legend, a reminder that even in the most peaceful places, the battle between good and evil rages on. And as long as there were those willing to stand against the darkness, there would always be hope. Epilogue. The Watcher years passed, and the Thompson boys grew into men. The farmhouse, once a battleground, remained a place of warmth and love. But in the quiet moments, when the wind whispered through the trees and the shadows danced in the moonlight, a lingering sense of unease remained. Father John, now an old man, often sat on the porch of the church, watching over the town he had sworn to protect. He knew that the demon was gone, but he also knew that evil never truly disappears. It waits, hidden in the darkness, for another chance to strike. And so the watch continued, a silent vigil against the forces of darkness, ever vigilant, ever ready to confront the shadows that lurk just beyond the light.